it's Reagan, and it is getting closer and closer to the end of the year, and I thought I would make another fun but controversial video, as, let's be real, those are fun to make. So I recently made my top books of the year 2015, where I talked about all of my favorite books of the year. Well, I thought I would also make a similar video, but instead I would talk about my least favorite books of the year. So without further ado, here are the most disappointing books I read in the year 2015. Quick disclaimer, I read a lot of really great books this year. The books I'm about to talk about by no means were awful or I hated them. They just weren't as good as I wanted them to be, or perhaps were like just alright. They were just like alright. So the first novel I'm going to talk about is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This is a young adult fantasy novel. It's about a society that's segregated by blood. There's silver bloods and just the normal people, the red bloods. Silver bloods have like superpowers, the red bloods don't. Our main character is a red blood, but she has superpowers. Whoa! Sends her on a amazing destiny journey. Wow! For me, I was pretty excited about this novel because a lot of people were saying it was like fantasy meets X-Men, and if you know me at all, I love X-Men so much, so I was super pumped going to the story. Ultimately, however, I found it to be just kind of conventional and kind of cliche. The story, the plot moved in ways I expected it to, and then it was also filled with a lot of typical YA tropes. So it was just overall just like an okay book. It wasn't bad, it was just kind of like, it was just like something I have read before like so many times, which is not really what I'm looking for when I pick up a book. I have too many other books to read. Next up is a graphic novel that I actually own still, and that is Fade Out by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. I was so excited about this. This is a film noir graphic novel following a murder on the set of like a Hollywood movie thing, so it has a really amazing premise, but ultimately I found the story to again just be lackluster. It didn't really compel me, and I didn't really like any of the characters. It ended up being, I don't know, it was a disappointing guy. I was really hoping for a lot more out of this. So yeah. Next up we have a sequel, and that is Point of Retreat by Colleen Hoover. I read both Slammed and Point of Retreat this year. So I liked Slam enough. Slammed gave me what I wanted out of like a new adult romance. It was cheesy, it was cute, but it was entertaining, and that's all I could ask for. However, Point of Retreat was such a bust for me. Honestly, I found the way their relationship was functioning in this novel was so unrealistic, and there was just that presented cliche of doubt and confusion when a new girl comes into town. It was just very conventional and annoying to read, to be completely honest with you. I still read it pretty quickly, but I honestly got so sick of the characters by the end of this novel. So I recommend if you are interested in reading the Slam series, just read the first one because it has some really cool elements with the Slam poetry, but the sequels are just not very good. This third novel is literally just the first book told in the male's perspective, which honestly I could make a whole video about how I literally hate that whole like ploy. I just hate that whole thing. But anyway, so Point of Retreat. Next up is a trilogy that I read the first two novels for and did a review on, and that is the Whispers of the Fallen series by J.D. Netto. These two books are honestly a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed them when I read them. It's a fallen angel paranormal young adult series. They're really fun, but I found the narration to be a little stunted and everything to be kind of a cliche, so ultimately it didn't stand out for me very much when I read it this year, and I don't really want to continue on with the series very much at all. I mean, for what it's worth, it was fun novels. I sped through them, but the narration again was just stunted and kind of awkward between characters, so yeah. Next up is another graphic novel, and that is The Wicked and the Divine, The Faust Act by Gillian McLeavy and Wilson Cowles. Again, I was so pumped for this graphic novel. I really wanted to love it, and the art, I'll say, in this graphic novel is stunning. This particular story is about gods that come down to earth. They like reincarnate every 100 years. They kind of set the pop culture tone. For me, however, I found this story to be confusing, unnecessarily confusing. Like, I felt nothing was explained at all, and sometimes I don't mind being thrust into plots where we kind of have to figure it out as we go, but there was no figuring out as you go for the story. It was just confusing, and I just literally had no idea what even happened in this novel at the end of this volume. I was like, what I don't even know where to go to here because I don't even know what happened. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Duff, and the Duff of course stands for The Designated Ugly Fat Friend. This novel was made into a movie this year, and it's a contemporary novel about a girl who is called the ugly girl in her friends group, and she's made fun of with this guy the whole beginning of the novel, but then she starts carrying on a relationship with him. I don't know, this book kind of, I think, pulls people into two camps. You either kind of love it or you hate it. For me, I kind of fell more into, I didn't hate it, but I definitely felt more of the like, I am impartial or I lean to dislike this book. It didn't really grab or hold my attention. I sped read the second half of the novel, which kind of makes me hazy in a lot of the final details because it didn't stick with me at all. I found the protagonist relationship with the love interest to be kind of uncomfortable, to be honest. It was just an odd setup. It clearly wasn't a healthy relationship in any way, shape, or form, especially with them starting out and him being verbally abusive to her in public and treating her poorly. So it was just something hard for me to buy into, and I just never did, and so I just never really enjoyed the novel itself. And the last book I'm going to talk about is a pretty decent book. Like, it's not a bad book, but it was ultimately very disappointing for me because I wanted to love it. And that is A Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. This is like the new It book of this year. It's compared to Gone Girl. It's a psychological thriller. And going into a psychological thriller that's compared to Gone Girl, I have exorbitantly high expectations. This novel for me started out fantastic. It had a really interesting, unreliable narrator who was an alcoholic, and it just added a really cool perspective for this novel. Obviously a sad perspective, she's an alcoholic, but nevertheless an interesting one. But ultimately this book fell flat, and it fell flat in the ending. And for psychological thrillers especially, endings are very important. You have a whole lead up, this whole book. You're leading up to some sort of mind-blowing conclusion, and ultimately I found the ending to be very lackluster, and it just wasn't what I was hoping the payout would be. It was just very like, oh really, that's where we're going with this? And so I was just so disappointed because it had such potential, and I was just bummed out by it. I know this is going to be made into a movie, and I hope it'll be a better movie than it was a book, but it was good. It wasn't great, and I was disappointed. Alrighty guys, those are the most disappointing books I read in the year 2015. Let me know down below some books you were super pumped about, but ultimately were very disappointed by. Anyway, I will see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye!